Hello, and welcome to Book of the Mouse Club, episode 111, Sunday, February 23rd, 2025.
Morning, monsieur.
Where are you off to?
The bookshop. I just finished the most wonderful story about a beanstalk and an ogre and...
That's nice. Marie! The baguettes! Hurry up!
I'm sorry, but how can one possibly pay attention to a book with no pictures in it?
My dear child, there are a great many good books in this world without pictures.
I almost bounced clear out of the book. Some bouncing, huh?
Come home or make myself known.
J. Thaddeus Turtle, Esquire. Have you never met him? You will find his story in this delightful little book, The Wind and the Willows.
I've come to return the book I borrowed.
Finished already?
Oh, I couldn't put it down. Have you got anything new?
Welcome back. I'm your host, Courtney, and I'm joined, as always, by the Cleo to my Figaro, my lovely co-host, Emily.
Hi ho the Mario listeners, welcome back. Getting ready to talk about a really exciting movie.
Today, we are celebrating the 85th anniversary of Walt Disney Feature Animation's second film, Pinocchio. Released on February 23rd, 1940, the film is highly regarded as a work of animation art. Will we agree, and how does the original text compare? Let's dive in. Emily, what did you find regarding the original Italian tale?
So I'm going to admit, I read the book first and watched the film, and then I did my research.
Okay.
And I think that did inform a little bit how I viewed this, but there is a lot. This is all of our original texts have such a rich history, but there's a lot here that I was not expecting. So first I want to credit that the information I'm going to share comes mostly from a Smithsonian Magazine article titled The Real Story of Pinocchio by Perry Glass, and is supplemented by information from the Encyclopedia Britannica and a little bit from Wikipedia. All right, and I want to apologize. I'm going to do my best with some of these Italian pronunciations, but I took French in high school, so we'll see how this goes. All right, the author, Carlo Lorenzini, whose pen name is Carlo Collodi, was born in Via Taddea, or Florence, Tuscany, in 1826. He grew up in a village that was built near a 17th century villa and was a community with a long history of working class people supporting that villa. Collodi grew up in a large family that knew hardship. His mother, Angelina, was a seamstress who followed an aristocratic Garzoni's daughter to this new estate when she married the Marquis Ginori of Florence. It was at Via Taddea that Angelina met and married the cook Domenico, who would be Carlo's father. As servants to the aristocracy, Lorenzini family understood working for a living and the hardship of being servants in a large estate. Collodi is one of 10 children, of whom only 4 would have survived to adulthood, and he himself grew up mostly with an aunt and uncle in Collodi, which would become his pen name, away from his immediate family because of economic hardships. The Ginori family, though, graciously paid for his education, intending for Collodi to join the church. However, he ended up studying philosophy and ended up working in a bookstore and in publishing, where he became passionate about politics and discussing and publishing works of art and ideas, especially surrounding the unification of the many city-states and kingdoms of Italy. He would volunteer twice as a soldier to the unification cause. It was not until his midlife that Collodi would write children's stories. Pinocchio is very much rooted, though, in his personal politics. The story of the famous puppet and its lessons are inspired by the unification of the Italian states into one country in 1861. However, the country unified as a kingdom and not a republic, as Collodi and many of his companions had fought for. He wrote Pinocchio based on ideas that he wrote about in his satirical newspapers, titled The Street Lamp. I wonder where we get Lampy from. And The Controversy. I apologize, I'm going to skip the Italian pronunciations of those. With many individual cultures and identities coming together under one new government, Collodi recognized that it was in the classroom that the next generation would learn to be Italians together and create a shared culture. From the Smithsonian article, it says, quote, when the country first unified, only 25% of Italians could read and write. By 1880, free compulsory education had raised literacy rates to nearly 40%, end quote. So if you look more closely at the original text, if we were to have read this in Italian, Pinocchio is written in a more formal Italian dialect because that was what was becoming common to unite the country. So this is acting as a work to unite all children across this new unified country. And it's also not surprising that as you read Pinocchio, the education, responsibility, obedience, and the overall theme of being, quote, good became his message to children in Pinocchio as they were growing up in this new evolving Italy. The stories also communicated the ideas of being cautious of swindlers, those who seek higher social status, the justice system, the corruption of business to parents, and the corruption of businesses to the parents who are reading these stories of their children. So he's using this not only to communicate morals to kids, as we're used to seeing with many fairy tales, but also as a vehicle of political discourse with parents and with adults. Essentially, his themes can be summed up as don't be a puppet and don't have your strings pulled by this new Italian kingdom's government and its aristocracy, which we're going to talk a lot more about these morals and messages later. The Adventures of Pinocchio is not Collodi's first novel or children's work, but it is his most popular. Like several of the original novels and fairy tales we've read on this podcast, The Adventures of Pinocchio, Story of a Puppet, was serialized, which explains its very episodic narrative. It was first published in 1881 in the, quote, children's newspaper. Its text was such a success that it was published as a full novel in 1883. The first English translation would come in 1892, and the book would be published in the United States come 1901 and has not been out of print since. The United States version was originally translated and illustrated by Walter S. Cramp and Charles Copeland, which is informing the version that we read for this podcast. Pinocchio has a strong legacy in its 144-year history. It is the world's third most translated book, and the original story has been adapted over 20 times in film since 1911. There are also several TV and theater adaptations and many characters inspired by Pinocchio. There are also several statues and cultural markers across Italy for the wooden puppet, like the Pizzeria Geppetto and a tavern named for, Matt Mangiafoco, or the Fire Eater in Collodi's hometown. But the Parco di Pinocchio and Pescia, Italy is what stands out to me the most. It opened in 1956, and Walt Disney even donated $100 himself to the park's construction. The park has several statues and mosaic artworks depicting scenes from the original story along its walking trails, and as this park grew, more children's attractions are added. It is truly a park for the whole family and celebrates this masterpiece of Italian literature. I've looked at some pictures. It's beautiful, and I think now I'd have to probably make this a stop on my trip. Like if you're going to visit the Little Mermaid statue in Copenhagen for the Little Mermaid, I think you've also got to visit Peter Pan in London, and now you've got to go visit Pinocchio in Italy. So in this episode, we're going to focus on Walt Disney Animation's 1940 adaptation of the story and its legacy 85 years later. So transitioning us from the original text to the film, Courtney, can you tell us more about Walt Disney's second movie?
Yes, I snagged this from our favorite resource, Disney A to Z, on the Disney D23 website. This is one of the longer A to Z entries. I feel like sometimes they're short and sometimes they're like 4 paragraphs. So here we go. Quote, Pinocchio film. A wooden puppet is brought to life by the Blue Fairy with the promise he can become a real boy if he earns it. He is led astray by the wicked honest John and his companion Gideon, who turned him over to an evil puppeteer Stromboli. Pinocchio is sent to Pleasure Island, where the wicked boys are turned into donkeys, but he escapes with the aid of his friend and conscience, Jiminy Cricket, and eventually redeems himself by saving his father Geppetto, who has been swallowed by Monstro the whale. The Blue Fairy rewards Pinocchio by turning him into a real boy. From an original serialized story written for a children's magazine by Collodi, the pen name of Carlo Lorenzini, in 1881, premiered in New York on February 7th, 1940, directed by Ben Sharpstein and Hamilton Lusk. Voices include Dickie Jones, Pinocchio, Cliff Edwards, Jiminy Cricket, Christian Reb, Geppetto, Evelyn Venable, Blue Fairy, 87 minutes. The film required the talents of 750 artists, including animators, assistants, in-betweeners, layout artists, background painters, special effects animators, and inkers and painters who produced more than 2 million drawings and used some 1,500 shades of paint for the Technicolor production. Jiminy Cricket became the film's most popular and enduring character, appearing in subsequent Disney films and television shows, including Fun and Fancy Free and The Mickey Mouse Club. The character, brought to life by animator Ward Kimball, was only a minor one in Collodi's tale, in which he was eventually squashed by Pinocchio. The Disney film gave him a much more important role. Gustav Tenegren, an award-winning illustrator, was assigned to the production to give the film the kind of lavish European storybook flavor that Walt Disney envisioned. Academy Award winner for Best Score and Best Song, When You Wish Upon a Star. Other songs include Hi Diddly Dee and I've Got No Strings. Many film historians describe the film as the most beautifully realized and technically perfect of all Disney animated features. The film cost $2.6 million in 1940, but using the same techniques and processes, it would have cost well over $100 million today. Pinocchio was re-released theatrically in 1945, 1954, 1962, 1971, 1978, and 1984. In 1992, it again returned to theaters in a new painstakingly restored print by Buena Vista Worldwide Services and YCM Labs of Burbank. It was released on video in 1985 and 1993. End quote.
Yeah, so this is a very, there's a lot of history surrounding Pinocchio. Long time story, almost 150 years old as a story, 85 years old as the Disney film. So we got a lot to talk about here. And I think this one's going to shock some of our listeners. But first, what are your memories of Pinocchio?
We owned it. I feel like I've talked about this in reference to other films. Like I had a vast, and I recognize the privilege, collection of Disney VHS tapes being a child of the 90s. I'm sure we got the 1993 release, but it is not one that I wanted to watch often. Like
Me either.
I didn't really enjoy it, and we'll get into it. And like I understand its artistic merit now as an adult, but it is not one I go back to the well for often, which is a point of contention in my household because it is my husband Doug's like one of his top movies. So I don't know. Sometimes I'll put it on for bed, and much like Figaro and Cleo in the beginning, I am asleep rather quickly. I do remember, wasn't it part of the sing-along songs? Like there was like a Hi Diddly Dee segment. Maybe I've Got No Strings. I don't remember what sing-along song.
Pretty much all of the songs. And that's my memories, is that I mostly remember it. And I love those sequences. I love the songs. The artwork is absolutely beautiful. But that's most of my memories, is I return to it mostly through sing-along songs.
I think I've talked about this before, but like it's a boy movie. Like I know that's so gendered, but I feel like we grew up in the Disney Renaissance and like we were being fed all these princesses and strong heroine stories. And so I think we were just more drawn to things like Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, and certainly Jasmine in Aladdin. Like there was enough to balance, even though, Aladdin is the titular character, like Jasmine is such a presence. And I was like, I don't know, this is a boy story. Like I just wasn't into it.
Yeah, I think I'd have to agree. Again, we owned it, VHS, we had it. Maybe it was one that was at my grandparents' a lot more because that's, in their wheelhouse of what they would remember of Walt Disney. But even there, I don't remember reaching for it too much. It is the sing-along songs that stick out to me. Like I know those sequences. I know the words. I can tell you who all the characters are. But it's mostly because I think of revisiting the film through sing-along songs, which I think almost every song, Hi Diddly Dee had one, When You Wish Upon a Star, I've Got No Strings, they all had.
That sounds right. I don't know if they were all like on the same tape or if they were spread
Probably
out
not.
across. Yeah.
But I had a lot of sing-along songs. And I know
Yes.
I've mentioned on this podcast before how much they were my parents' go-tos when my sister and I would be like, we want to watch a movie before bed. And they're like, look, you're watching a movie. It's 30 minutes long. So that's how I mostly visited Pinocchio. And then seeing it in the parks, we're going to talk about parks, but Walt Disney World didn't have a Pinocchio ride when we were younger, correct?
Still doesn't have a ride.
Okay. I'm just making sure.
Oh, even like it didn't like go away.
Like
Yeah,
I
no, we
wasn't
never had one.
like missing something. I think I remember I did finally, we'll talk about the parks, ride Pinocchio's Dark Ride when I did visit Disneyland, but I did have a 90s CD-ROM game that was Disneyland based versus Walt Disney World. So I think I have some
that's
memories
cool.
of seeing
Like exposure to it.
Yeah, it was fun. Like you got to go around the parks like through the map and go see attractions. It was mostly pictures, but they had hidden Mickeys everywhere. It was really fun. I actually found the game. I have it. I don't remember the official title, but I do have the game. But I think, remember maybe seeing parts of the Dark Ride as a kid through that game.
That makes
But
sense.
yeah, some references in the park that do stand out to me as a child, which we'll get to. But yeah, it was not a movie that we reached for very much.
No, sounds like we had very similar thoughts there. Let's see what our thoughts were about the book. How did you feel, Emily?
It was fine.
Was it though? It's okay
I
to say no.
It wasn't my favorite. It wasn't great, which was surprising me because, like I said, so I said at the top of the episode that I did the research after, which tends to happen. We tend to read first and then we structure our episode and discussion questions, what we want to talk about after what we've read. I'm thinking maybe for these fairy tale favorites moving forward, I should maybe do my research first and reverse my order here because once I learned more of the history and the
Like a
politics, I found that intriguing.
better appreciation.
Yeah, like understanding how the unification of Italy and some of Collodi's politics, I can see now where these morals are coming from, which we're used to in fairy tales, but they have a little bit more, I think, staying power with me and also recognizing these villains as like part of the aristocracy, part of people who are trying to gain through this new government structure. So I found that intriguing, but the Smithsonian Magazine was referencing different professors of literature who teach this in their classes, and they're like, the reaction is always how many people didn't realize how different the Walt Disney picture was is compared to the original story, but then also how much they loved the story. And I was like, oh no, what did I miss? Because I
I
didn't
don't
love
know,
it.
you and me both. This is, I think, my least favorite thing that we've read on this podcast. I don't know if you saw my
More
Goodreads.
than Alice in Wonderland?
Yeah, okay, I gave
More than
Alice in
Peter
Wonderland.
Pan?
I think I gave both of those at least 2 stars, maybe three. Girl, Goodreads, this is a 1 star. You can go see for
Oh,
yourself,
wow.
but I hated reading this
And I do
in
wonder what
private.
maybe gets
And
lost in
I, okay, I want to
translation.
defend the other two. I didn't hate reading them. I just wasn't super
Right.
into it.
Okay.
But no, I like really didn't like this one.
It felt like I see all the parts that Disney picked,
Yeah.
and we'll talk about
But
the
otherwise it was
adaptation.
repetitive.
It's very repetitive, and I know we've said that before about other stories that we've read that were serialized, that a lot of things do get repeated because you're going possibly weeks or months in between installments, and people are picking them up at different points. Um, but then when they put them together in a book, there's clearly no editing. They just put them all together, and it's just very disjointed.
Yes.
And there's no plot until until chapter 25 out of like 36.
The PDF wasn't even that long. Like it was 128 pages, I think, and some of those pages would
Mhm.
only have like a paragraph on them and then like the next chapter started on the next page. But theoretically, a 128 page PDF on my Kindle, like I could have easily done that in a weekend. It took me a week to read this, and I just did like six
Yeah,
chapters at a
same.
time. I was like, okay, that's enough for this. I'm gonna go read my other book that I'm enjoying more. So I would like take my little
Yeah.
Kindle to the lunchroom, and then I would take my physical book that I was also reading for fun. I'm like, okay, I just gotta do 6 at a time.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a struggle. So based off of us agreeing on not loving the book so much, what do you think of the Disney adaptation?
I think, you know what? I'm gonna give them credit. They did a fair job. I feel like we talked about this way back when we did Mary Poppins because that was rather episodic as well. We're like, oh, it makes sense to me that Walt Disney and the Sherman Brothers came to each other with notes and had like the same chapters circled because they're like,
Hmm.
this would do well for the film. You know, I think the through line is there. And it's not my favorite Disney movie, but I'm not saying it's bad. Like speaking of rating systems,
Yeah.
like on Letterboxd, it's a solid 3 stars out of 5 for me. So look, you gained 2 stars for the movie. So there's similarities enough to carry through, but I think they put more heart in it. They made him less
I
annoying.
agree.
I
Oh,
I
Pinocchio
found
is so
him
annoying.
so annoying in the book. I mean, I did have the little movie Pinocchio, father, father, every time that was like written
Yeah.
in the text. So I did picture movie Pinocchio, but he was just, I'm not gonna say about, I'll go back to the well house. I'm not gonna say a bad word, but like, oh, fluff and stuff boy. Like, he just did not listen. And I got so mad at him. I was like, oh my God, Pinocchio, Just listen. Don't be
Yeah.
stupid. They are the cat and the fox are clearly trying to rob you. Like, you don't just put 5 coins in the ground and 2,000 are gonna spring up. Like, come on, Pinocchio, let's be real. Let's think this through. And then it just felt like, oh,
Yeah.
that saying that's like, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. Like, that was just Pinocchio's life. I was like, get it together,
Right.
Pinocchio. Get it together.
Yeah. I think Disney did a good job of condensing the episodes and making them actually fit together. Like the whole time in
It
the Disney
moves, yeah.
adaptation, the plot is about there's a clear goal. We're gonna talk about this, but like in the story, Pinocchio does not have a desire to be a real boy until chapter 25 of a 36 chapter book. So there's really nothing there in the book like pulling each episode along. It's just constantly Pinocchio getting into these issues. Whereas in the film, Pinocchio is brought to life because Geppetto wishes for it, and the Blue Fairy thinks that he's been a very good man to the town and bringing joy to others, that he deserves this. And then right away, Pinocchio says, what do I have to do to be a real boy? And we get set on this pathway that, okay, he's going to go to school, but then he's distracted while going to school. But then he gets taken by the puppet master. Like, he's constantly always trying to go back to his father. And in his journey home, is running into other trouble. Whereas in this book, like, we're in our hometown, we go on an adventure. We're back in our hometown, father's lost, I'm now living here. Like, it was so disjointed. Whereas at least the film, we were on one continuous journey, and all of those little vignettes fit together on his journey home. It was more Odyssey like than
Many
crazy.
years was the book because it would just be like, and then he went to jail for 4 months. I was like, oh, okay. And there's like,
Oh, it's
and then they
so
were in the
violent.
island of toys for 5 months. Like, it would just months would pass in the book. And I'm
And
like,
he was
okay.
in the Shark, aka Monstro, for 2 years. Geppetto was gone for
But
2 years. So like this whole book takes
the
place
timeline
over
was confusing.
somewhere between 5 to 10 years long
I feel like
for
the movie's
him to
like
become
a
a real boy.
week max, if
Yeah.
even that.
I mean, there's no like real passage of time, but agreed. The pacing is better. The characters are better.
Did you have a favorite part in the book or in the film or anything that overlaps?
Book was a little hard.
Mm.
Um, I think my favorite part of the film is the beginning. I love When You Wish Upon a Star. I love the workshop.
Oh my gosh, my
Not
favorite
only because
part
it's
is in there
visually
too.
beautiful, but the animation is so fun. What's your favorite part?
My favorite part is so specific. And
Okay.
I had to mention this because I make it far enough and then I fall asleep like when Figaro goes to sleep. But when Jimny's in the workshop and there's like the little music box and then he's afraid of being spotted, so he becomes part of the music box and he's like ba,
Oh
ba, da,
yeah.
da, ba, 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 and like
Yeah, he's using
miming.
his hat and
Yeah,
his
yeah, he has his hands. He's
umbrella.
moving the hat up in the like as a little mechanical thing. I just think he's so adorable in
So
that. Like,
cute.
I will be maybe falling asleep at the beginning and like Doug will wake me up a little bit to be like, okay, like your favorite part's coming up, and I'm like, oh yay, and then I roll over and
You're falling asleep.
fall
That's not
into
even like
sleep.
10 minutes into the
No, but like,
movie.
no, you have to understand, we put movies on for bedtime.
That's right.
We're
Okay.
not putting them on to watch. Like, we like stuff that has music, so often it is. I mean, I feel
Yeah.
like pre-Disney Plus, we had the quest of obtaining every Walt Disney feature animation film in digital. So yeah, we'll put on Beauty and the Beast, and I'll fall asleep early in that. That's one of my favorite films. But the purpose is we're putting
Okay.
it on for bedtime. But I will try to see that part and then go to bed. So it's not like, oh, we put it on in the living room and I'm out on the couch, which does happen with many movies. Just in general, I do fall asleep very easily. But yeah, no, like if it's on for bedtime, then I try to make it to that. And
Yeah,
then I
so
fall
that
asleep.
beginning, I agree. It's just
It's
so
so cute.
whimsical
Yes.
and
A lot of great
I-
gags, like
yeah.
strong 9 old men. Let's just put all the gags we can in
And it's
here.
probably some of the brightest color throughout the
It's a
film.
beautiful use of color.
All the little details, like you see a lot of the aesthetic brought over from Snow White. Um, I made a connection this time when I was watching it. Again, all of the mechanical, the music boxes, the cuckoo clocks. I think I'm gonna make a guess here, but I think the toy shop scene in The Great Mouse Detective, when they go to the toy store before Olivia's kidnapped and all the stuff starts going off, It reminded me so much of that, and I
Oh, I
wonder
could
if
see
they went
that.
back
Like
and
an
looked at Pinocchio for
homage.
inspiration because there's a lot of gear type toys
I
that
wouldn't
are
be
wind-ups and
surprised to learn
mechanicals,
that.
and there's stuff moving on the walls. Because there was a point where they kind of zoomed out in Pinocchio and you saw like everything moving at one time. And I was like, why do I know this? I'm like, oh, it reminded me a lot of Great Mouse Detective. So I really enjoyed that.
One thing between both the book and the film that I wanted to call out, this actually came up in conversation with my boss today. I was told him I had the podcast this evening, like we were talking about Pinocchio, and he was like, what's something weird? And I thought this was a very wise insight. He said, for how much we associate Pinocchio and his nose growing when he lies, it's not a prominent part of the movie or the book. Like I feel like it happened
It
twice
happens twice in
in
the
the book.
book,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
only,
I
yeah,
remembered
once.
correctly. It's in the movie. But that's like
Yeah.
when you think Pinocchio, you think his nose growing. And that's not just a Disney thing. I mean, Shrek has a Pinocchio character. Like that's a whole fantastic comedy gag in Shrek 2 that is rather adult. But yeah, like when you think Pinocchio, you're like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, the little boy who lies and his nose grows. But it's not as important of a plot point as you would think it would be. And when he said that, I was like, oh my gosh, you're right. Like, yeah, I didn't really think about that. So shout out to Chad and his insight.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things that are similar and different. Some of the vignettes are similar. We're gonna move through some comparisons. I kind of have like three parts: characters, plot, and morals, which we'll decide which order we
Okay.
go in. But why not
Yeah,
we
let's do
start?
characters.
Let's start with characters. I kind of went in the order of which they appear, and I didn't pick every single character.
Yeah.
But let's start with Geppetto. Things that were similar, things that were different.
I felt like he was less of a doting father. I mean, it's
Yeah.
clear like he takes care of Pinocchio. Like he gives up his coat so that he can buy Pinocchio a book for school, which becomes a bit of a crucial plot point in the book. Certainly never mentioned in the film. In the film, he's a much more doting father, and like you get the sense that he like wants to be a father. He wishes on the star, and that's not really prominent in the book. He kind of just like gets this talking block of wood from a different merchant and
Yeah.
then turns him into a marionette. It's like, oh, cool, you talk. Don't be a dick.
Yeah, he's definitely more of a stoic father. I think he's definitely loving in his own way. Like you said, he gives up the coat. He goes searching for him for 2 years to find him. Like he
Yeah, oh yeah,
clearly
he
cares.
cares. Yeah.
But there's no wishing. And like that's the whole beginning part is that he wishes on a star. There is zero wishing on stars in
Mm-mm.
this book.
Where did we
We
get
will
When You
talk
Wish
about the
Upon a
Blue
Star?
Fairy. Yeah, I think that's a very Disney thing is bringing wishes and heart's desires. We saw that with the wishing well. So like wishes continues to just be a Disney thing. Um, but yeah, like he has no wishes. He's just trying to make a living, doing his job. He's a wood carver. He gets the wood from um someone else. Who is the no, he's from a carpenter, but he's a wood carver. I get like slightly different. He makes the clocks and the puppets. Like Geppetto's a little bit more specialized in that realm, whereas this other guy does like furniture. He was trying to make Pinocchio. We're gonna talk about Pinocchio. He's trying to make Pinocchio into a chair, and this piece of wood keeps like talking to him, and he's freaked out by it. So he just like Geppetto's like, "Hi, I'm here to pick up any scrap wood you have that I can make, stuff to sell." And he's like, "Sure, here, take this."
To take this one.
But yeah, Geppetto was described as like being mean. Like the townsfolk, they don't dislike him, but they're like, oh, he'll be sure to give Pinocchio a good punishment for not doing X, Y, and Z. Or he and the other Mr. Cherry, his nose was described as being like a cherry.
Yeah,
The other wood,
that's the carpenter guy.
the carpenter, they like get into a fist fight.
Yeah, when the book opened with Mr. Cherry, I was like, oh, is there no Geppetto? And then finally, like 2 chapters later, the
Yeah,
character of these are very short chapters. The character of Geppetto was introduced, and I was like, oh, okay, we just
finally.
wrote the other guy.
I
Of
literally wrote in
course.
my notes, like I was annotating in the margins as I do. Literally, as soon as Geppetto comes in, I was like, what was the point of the last 2 chapters? Other than to establish where Pinocchio comes from. I was like,
He is a
I don't get.
sentient block of wood.
Yeah, so let's talk about Pinocchio.
The sentient block of wood.
That was weird to me that it's just this magical piece of wood. He was a block, and this guy was trying to make a chair, and he was like, "No, don't hurt me." And it was already magic. The fairy doesn't bring him to life. Geppetto didn't carve him and then wish for him to be real. Like he just springs to life.
Have you ever seen the movie Wet Hot American Summer?
No, I haven't.
Okay, it's on Netflix, but there's like a sentient can of beans. And I don't know, it just like that. It's a very absurdist humor film. So like they don't even explain it. There's a lot not explained in that movie, but it is very funny. But yeah, it's like, oh, okay, well the can of beans talks, and that's how I feel Pinocchio is like, yeah, the block of wood didn't want to be carved into a chair, and now he's gonna be a marionette. Okay. But yes, weird lack of motivation here. Character-wise, I think very similar. I mean, they're both kind of annoying. Movie Pinocchio is less annoying than book Pinocchio. He's a little more
Yeah.
earnest.
So I'm tipping my hat here. My extra resource is going to be Disorder. So I re-listened to their episode about Pinocchio, and they referenced that when they were in storyboarding and putting the story together, Walt had kept saying like, "You don't like Pinocchio. So how do you root for a character, and how are we going to get people to stick through an hour and a half of watching this character if you don't like him?" And a very subtle difference they made is that like Pinocchio in the book, he's mischievous. He's purposeful about not wanting to follow rules and being disobedient.
He's like
Whereas
proud of being lazy.
yeah,
He's like, well, I don't do that.
whereas like he's too cool for everything. He's almost like a teenager as a child, in some ways, like or like that stereotype.
I got what you mean.
But Pinocchio in the film, it's that he's naive. He wants to be incredibly trusting. He has more of like a block of wood as a head. Like he just doesn't have experience and he doesn't understand why it's wrong. Whereas Pinocchio in the book is just very like, I know it's wrong, but I'm going to do it anyway. So that difference is quite big. And Disney, I think that's one of the triumphs of their adaptation is making Pinocchio, while he might still be annoying, he's at least likable. You're rooting for him. He's got a character arc. I
Yeah.
mean, Pinocchio in the book does learn his lesson. By the end, he goes to school. He becomes a real boy, which we'll talk about.
But it took us 36 chapters to
it
get
took,
there.
yeah, like he had no goal other than I want to go home to my father the whole time. But he wants to go home to his father because he's cold and he's hungry, not because he actually like
Cares.
learns
Like,
his
somebody
lesson.
needs to take care of me.
It's not until, like I said, chapter 25 where he's like, oh, I want to be a real boy. I want to be like the kids in my class now that he finally goes to school, like 4 years later. So like it takes him a while to have an arc, and that arc only lasts us 8 chapters, whereas at least in the movie there is a quest the entire time.
I think the biggest asset to the film is Jiminy Cricket, and there's
100%.
a reason he has become so pervasive in Disney beyond this film. He's just such a good character. He's funny.
He's
You
so
said
funny.
our favorite scenes were both the opening and that workshop, like just the way he interacts with the various doodads in the shop, like even though they're inanimate. Like he gets flustered, he blushes, he's a bit of a flirt. He is such a well developed character, and as the D23 entry already mentioned, Pinocchio just squashes him with a hammer in like one of the first 10 chapters or so. He comes back as a ghost cricket.
As a
I was trying to
ghost.
explain that to Doug, and he was like, "Oh, so he's like
And then there's
Cricket Obi-Wan."
another
And I was
cricket
like,
that shows up later too.
"Oh, I
And
thought
I
that
wrote in
was
my notes,
still
I was like,
him."
is this the same guy? But it didn't say ghost this time.
Okay,
When
there,
he comes
yeah.
back, it was
He
so
comes
confusing.
back twice. Once they're like he's a ghost cricket, and I was like, okay, Cricket Obi-Wan, sure. But yeah, the third time the cricket shows up, I was like, is this the same cricket? I just assumed it was, but I could be wrong. I feel like it was because he's like, well, I told him to be kind to people. Like there are elements of a conscience there. It's not as overt as it is in the Disney film where he is officially the conscience and like given a little badge, but he does serve as somewhat of a moral compass in his limited appearances. He's not named Jiminy. He's just a cricket.
He's just the talking cricket.
Yeah.
I think he serves like in many fairy tales, and throughout this one, like the woodland creatures are the wise ones.
Yeah.
He's not the only person to impart knowledge. There's a bunny, there's a bird, but they all die. Like every time someone imparts knowledge to Pinocchio, they all die. So odd.
Don't know what was going on there.
I mean, full grim fairy tale vibes. Like fairy tales are violent and they're dark. But I found his piece of knowledge that he imparts. So he exists. He comes to life in chapter 4 and is dead a page later. Like chapter 4 is 2 pages. That's it. 2 pages long with, 1.5 inch margins. So I could probably condense this all on one page with formatting. Um, he says, quote, "I am the talking cricket, and I've been living in this room for more than 100 years." So he's also very old. "Today, however, this room is mine," said the marionette, "and if you wish to do me a favor, get out now and don't turn around, not even once." Um, and then the cricket responds, "I refuse to leave this spot until I have told you a great truth." And Pinocchio says, "Tell it then, and hurry." And his knowledge that he imparts to Pinocchio is, quote, "Woe to boys who refuse to obey their parents and run away from home. They will never be happy in this world, and when they are older, they will be very sorry for it," end quote. And then, yeah, like half a page later, Pinocchio gets frustrated with him. Pinocchio jumped in a fury, took a hammer from the bench, and threw it with all his strength at the talking cricket. At last, with a weak crick, 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 the poor cricket fell from the wall, dead.
And I smash him with a hammer.
Yzma would approve.
Yzma, yeah,
Yeah,
they
so
use that later.
I think they did a really good job. That was, like you said, a good part on Disney that we need a companion. And we see that frequently throughout all of Disney's films, that there is always a companion of some sort. Um, and I think that also helps to soften Pinocchio because he doesn't know right from wrong. Jiminy Cricket in the film also has a character arc because at the first time Pinocchio doesn't listen to him, he's like, "Well, fine, I guess you don't need a conscience." But then he's like, "Wait, he has to learn and I have
He's
to
a
stick with him."
conscience with a conscience. He has
Yes.
his own
So even Jiminy is on a learning curve and has an arc of he wants to be a conscience and approved by the Blue Fairy because I think he wants to impress her at first.
He's got a crush on her for sure.
And he got fancy clothes and he's, has, a livelihood now thanks to the Blue Fairy, but he's not very committed until he gets to know Pinocchio a little bit more. And something that is, I guess I should bring this up about Pinocchio, is consistent is that despite all of Pinocchio's faults, he is compassionate and has a good heart. Like he doesn't like hurt. Pinocchio doesn't want to go to school, but he doesn't want to hurt other people. We see it time and again that, at least in the film, he learns along the way, like he does not trust Gideon and Honest John again after the first time around. He tries to go with Lampy and then learns like, oh, maybe I shouldn't smoke
It's
and drink
Lampwick.
and do the
Sorry, Lampy
Lampwick.
is Peach Dragon.
No, I think he called him Lampy too
Did
in the
he?
film.
Okay.
It is
always
Lampwick,
think
but I
of-
thought he called him Lampy,
maybe.
like as a nickname.
Okay. When I heard Lampy, I go to Peach Dragon. Iconic Mickey
That's
Rooney
consistent
portrayal.
from book to film. It was Lampwick in both.
Yes.
So like Pinocchio learns along with, but he's always described as compassionate. Like people take pity on him because he is so good-hearted, and that's consistent. But I feel like we see that a lot more in the film, and it's so much more endearing because he's at least learning along the way. Whereas this Pinocchio, I'm like, I get that you're nice, but like you said, fool me once, fool me twice. He just keeps doing the same antics over and over again.
36 chapters worth.
All right, what about Stromboli and the Fire Eater?
Yeah, I would say maybe not the most obvious connection, but I was like, all right, well, that was clearly the inspiration, and that like he's this entertainer, like head of things, kind of controlling, where Stromboli's just more of a puppet master. But when I was reading that bit, I was like, oh, okay, this is the Stromboli bit.
Yeah, I had in my notes that the appearance of Stromboli and the Fire Eater is very, very similar. Like, I think animators directly took the description to create that character. The only thing that seemed really different to me was that the Fire Eater in the book, and that's what he's called. That's his name. Um, he lets Pinocchio go. Like he takes pity on Pinocchio, which this kind of harkens to what Collodi was talking about in some of those morals of, beware of these people who want to take advantage. When Pinocchio finally calls him, "Your Excellency, please," once he gets that praise, he's willing to show mercy. "I will use my power because you recognize I'm powerful." But he lets him go, and he chops up another marionette as firewood to cook his dinner. Um, But that was pretty consistent. I was just surprised by that he lets Pinocchio go. I think it was more exciting in the film that Pinocchio escaped,
Yeah, that
even though we
makes
don't
sense.
see Stromboli anymore.
Another clear one to me is the blue fairy or the azure-haired maiden slash fairy in the book who takes many forms. Like she was a
She
blue
does.
goat.
Yeah, I think she's definitely more mythical in the
That's
book.
what
Like you said, she
I
has
would use.
multiple forms, more
She also
woodland fairy-esque.
ages like she's like a
Yes.
little girl fairy and she's like, "Oh, you're like my little brother." And then she kind of takes on a much more motherly role
Yeah, Pinocchio
as she
calls her
ages.
his mother.
Yeah.
Um, but not quite the same. She does not pursue Pinocchio. Pinocchio finds her when he's escaping. They're called the cat and the fox. They don't have names in the book, but as we would recognize them as Gideon and Honest John. Uh, he runs into her when he's escaping them, and he's trying to get away from who he calls the assassins, which is actually those two. He just doesn't recognize them in their disguises, and he's pleading for sanctuary, essentially. And he gets caught by the assassins. She saves him from being hung. Again, very graphic and very violent. And then she basically starts taking care of him until he is reunited with Geppetto. And yeah, she does change a couple of different ways. She's another one who's imparting knowledge, trying she's the one that explains to him why his nose grows because he's telling lies. So that's pretty consistent. But she has no interactions with Jiminy Cricket. She is the one that will turn him into a real boy at the end.
But we don't really see much magic from her
Yeah,
otherwise.
not very much other than like many Disney heroines. She communicates a lot with woodland animals who do her bidding.
Very true.
But that's about it. One final big difference, Monstro versus the shark. This one surprised me a little bit.
I was curious though because we were reading a translation, like it was just referred to as the shark, but was that somebody's translation? Was he maybe a
Okay.
whale? Another, I mean, I didn't care enough to to dig deep into that, but I was like, I wonder if he's literally a shark or just that's where the translation ended up. I don't know, but they still get swallowed by a giant marine animal.
Yeah, I always thought Monstro was more inspired by like Jonah and the whale, the biblical story. So maybe in like you said with translation, maybe it's an allusion to that. Um, but I was just like, wow, a shark. I don't know why, but like I couldn't picture the Monstro character as anything other than a whale, and
Because
maybe
he's
that's
so
just
big. Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
not to say
like a
that there's big
sharks
sharks,
are
but
big, but
whales are
whales are
much
bigger.
bigger. Agreed.
Um,
Yeah, that was
but it's the
interesting.
same thing. I think though that Monstro, when we get to that journey, um, is more menacing. Maybe it's just because of how short of a time we
In
get
the
it in the book.
movie,
Yeah, I think in the movie
yeah,
he's
yeah.
like the
Well, yeah,
build
you're
up
also
to
gonna have
him.
the cinematic score and like that
Yeah.
moment in Fantasmic that we'll certainly get to. But yeah, I can see that. A lot of things just felt larger and more prominent in the movie, but I think that's because it's streamlined. It's under 90 minutes. It's a tight, I think 86 or 88
Yeah.
minutes, so it moves.
So the one thing that kind of got me in the film, I was like moving with it. Like solid 3 stars, I think I'd be on the same, but like I don't dislike Pinocchio the film. I was
Just don't
enjoying the
watch it.
progression. But the part that kind of took me out of it for a second was he gets home in the film. Pinocchio's like, "Where's my father?" And no one knows. But then a dove comes down and it's the blue fairy essentially and just drops a note and says, "By the way, he's in Monster of the Whale." And they're like, "Okay, let's
Oh,
go." And I
thanks.
was just like, that for a second, like we were doing so good with the progression of how like one at least bl one adventure bled into the other, and then that one just felt so abrupt to me
They just
in the
really wanted to
film.
get the Monstro in there. They're like, oh, yeah, here we go.
But then, so when I was reading that, that was a part I was like, I want to know how they did this in the story. How do we get to the shark or to Monstro? And it really wasn't that different. I was like surprised. I mean, maybe by this point in the like by chapter 32, I should not be surprised. That it just kind of like things just happen out of nowhere in this book.
Some like
But I
weird
was expecting
subplots.
something a little bit more how he gets to Monstro, and it really wasn't. It was again a note that your father went looking for you 2 years ago. We saw him go in the ocean. We're assuming he was captured by the mythical shark.
And yet he survived.
And yet he's fine. In there he found a shipwreck. He did not take the pets with him this time around. When he's swallowed by the shark, he finds a shipwreck in the shark.
Why is Cleo in her fishbowl in the ocean? How does
It's
that
like
work? There's some
SpongeBob.
questions of physics in the bubble that Jiminy's in, and then he can breathe, but then he lets water into the bubble through his umbrella.
And
You
but was
just gotta go
swimming
with it.
underwater for
It's
days.
fine.
Like Pinocchio, can breathe underwater.
He's wood.
He's wood. He's not a living
He might
thing with
dry
lungs.
rot, but it's fine.
Uh, but yeah, I do enjoy the monster sequence though. Where at least in the film, Pinocchio's mischievous is actually their saving grace. He's like, let's start a fire, let's make him sneeze. So maybe some of his mischievous actually becomes resourcefulness. He learns how, moments when it's good to use that thinking and when it's not good to use that creative thinking. Um, so I do enjoy the monster piece. The underwater animation is beautiful. I do think there's some urgency there, and it's a good ending that gets us to how he becomes a real boy. Um, but just that moment when we're transitioning from getting out of Pleasure Island and getting to Monstro was just a little disjointed to me.
Well, let's also transition into another section here with the morals. As you described, the original story is a cautionary tale of bad behavior and disobedience. How does this lesson come across in the original story versus in the animated feature?
I think in the original story, it's very blatant. You should obey,
It's
otherwise you
repetitive.
will. Very repetitive. You should obey your guardians, be good, go to school, study. That obedience of like what is stereotypical of children, I would say, in the 17th, 18th, and 19th century. Um, because otherwise the consequences are like death, having,
So true.
being captured by assassins, being chopped into firewood. Multiple times Pinocchio is almost eaten by somebody. Like it's very dire. It's not just like you're gonna
Pinocchio
get
has
cold
been through a
dinner.
lot.
Yeah, he is very, very traumatized. Maybe we need to give him a little bit more credit for his
I
behavior
guess
because
so.
boy could use some support. Um, but I do think the film does that as well. It's not so much about obedience, which I think is a little bit more clear in the book, but it's about being, quote, good. Being a
Yeah.
good person
A moral
is going
compass
to
that
reward
guides
you.
Always let your conscience be your guide.
Something else that kind of came about when I was doing some research is that with that death is also this hunger aspect. So I pulled this from the Smithsonian magazine. It said, quote, but Collodi was profoundly aware that children could not be expected to learn if they were hungry. In an open letter called Bread and Books, he argued that all humans need to eat and drink and be protected from the elements to have a place to sleep. It was a harsh eat or be eaten world, and the only way was through education. Which again, reflecting back after I've read that and then this analysis from professors in the Smithsonian, I see it now why Pinocchio keeps getting eaten, why he complains a lot about being hungry, that maybe he can't learn obedience or he can't focus on being good if he does not have his basic needs. And that's something we actually talk a lot about as educators in school is we sometimes we quote, you have to Maslow before you can bloom. You need your Maslow hierarchy of needs before I can start doing higher order thinking and learning. And I do see that. Maybe that's why Pinocchio constantly is hungry and constantly is making bad choices because his basic needs are not being met.
He's
Interesting.
the puppet. He's wood. What does wood eat? You
But
can't
yet he was
overthink
hungry and cold.
it. Is he okay?
But I thought that was an interesting allegory, or bringing that in, and Collodi again be like, you have to make sure like your children need to be fed, they need to be clothed, they need to be housed. There are times where Pinocchio's made fun of for having flimsy clothing because Pinocchio couldn't provide that, or sorry, Geppetto couldn't provide more than like a paper shirt, a dough hat for his kid, and we see that there's time Pinocchio is cold, he's hungry, and he's driven more by those needs than the need to be good, like going to school, etc. So I thought that was an interesting. I think that was that parent through line that I had talked about earlier. That stuff that Chloe was putting in there was not just for kids, be obedient, but also, hey, parents, if you want that outcome, you need to also make sure your children are provided for, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, I feel the morals also lend well to our third topic here, which is the plot, because there's a crucial plot point that we haven't really touched on, and that is Pinocchio turning into a donkey. I feel like that's partially, you know, a portion of the climax of Pinocchio's mischief, and what finally sets him on that path to go home and find Geppetto. So what did you think of like Toy Island or Playland versus Pleasure Island in the book?
This is where I think Disney got more dark
Yeah.
than like Toy Island, Playland. I heard it mentioned as Playland in a couple things I read. In the translation we read said Toyland, where it's literally just kids playing with toys. There wasn't this whole like smoking, drinking,
Yeah. Pleasure
gambling.
Island's like, all right, here we go. That
They
part
really
is
leaned
dark.
in.
The
Yeah.
whole
I
donkey
mean,
thing is very distressing. Like the
yes,
little
it
donkeys
is.
who are crying out for their mommies. I'm like, I'm not okay.
And in the
I'm
book, Pinocchio
sad.
recognizes something's wrong a little early. Lampwick does persuade him. Pinocchio is resisting temptation until, for like a good 2 chapters, he's resisting temptation to go with Lampwick. And then he does finally go, but he does notice when he sees the donkeys pulling the carriage, he's like, they have clothes on, they have shoes. Did this donkey just talk to me? Like he's catching on that something's a little off. Whereas it takes Pinocchio and Lampwick in the film a lot longer to realize something is too good to be true. What did you think about that section?
Yeah, I mean, I figured we were getting there. Like, that's really towards the end of the chapters. And I was like, surely they're going to turn into donkeys in this book because that's pretty dark if the Disney company came up with that themselves. But yeah, I feel like there's definitely a metaphor in there, and I think I'm entitled to say a curse word. I know we stray from it, but in this case, it is apt because the term ass also refers to a donkey. So I feel like the choice of a donkey was purposeful. Like, don't be an ass. Y'all are being little ones, so we're gonna turn you into them, literally.
There's also a piece of this that goes back to the politics. Um, like a donkey or a mule, they don't know how to stop working. That's always something. I'm not sure where this came up in my childhood, but like a horse, they will stop working if they're tired. Like they'll cut. Whereas a donkey and mule, it said like they're the hardest workers. They're stubborn as a mule, stubborn as a donkey. Like they just always work. And this is part of, again, from the Smithsonian Magazine, Collodi's message to children at the time is that when life of an unskilled laborer is one of unrelenting hardship, it was as if they were insisted on being donkeys. So don't become this remittent work donkey for this new aristocracy, for, work for yourself, be educated, don't be brought into an unskilled labor workforce, or else you're going to be a donkey, and will die to death as a workhorse, essentially. So this is also a commentary on labor, lack of education and lack of literacy, as a metaphor in Collodi's work. And it's the one piece of foreshadowing we do get. Maybe my favorite part of the book is just Jiminy Cricket's chapter 4, because he does say, quote, "Poor little silly, don't you know if you go on like this, you will grow into a perfect donkey and you'll be the laughing stock of everyone." And it takes us
Jiminy
another 25 chapters to get there,
coming
but
through.
there
He's the
was some
voice of
foreshadowing.
reason.
So one major plot point we still need to talk about. The main part of the plot in the film is that Pinocchio is on a quest to become a real boy. However, as I've said a couple times, it's not until chapter 25 of the book that Pinocchio has any desire to change from being a marionette. The Azure family fairy says in the original tale that to become a real boy, Pinocchio has to, quote, act like a well-behaved child, end quote, in order to, as she says, quote again, that good boys are obedient, love to study and work, tell the truth, and gladly go to school, end quote. So we're going to take these one at a time, book and movie. So according to the book, the criteria set by our blue fairy, the Azure fairy, do you think Pinocchio achieved all of these things to become a real boy in the book?
I mean, he kind of just crammed in for the test at the last minute there.
That's
Like,
a good analogy.
chapter 36 is Pinocchio righting all of his wrongs. Like, he's like, I'm gonna go back to the farmer and build a well for him. It's fine. And like, just let's recap everything he did, and he's gonna go make it right in the final 6 pages of the book. So, I mean, I guess according to a checklist, yeah, he passed. Do I think he deserved to become a real boy? No, because he was a terrible character and I hated him.
I like that analogy. You said he crammed for the test at the end. Like he does learn the value of hard work. So they, like you said, helping the farmer, they allude back to another time, one of the first times he's trying to make his way home. He's hungry and he keeps asking people to help him. And they say, like, hey, if you can help me carry this basket, literally the most minimal labor you can think of. Help me carry these baskets home because this woman or person can't hold everything and I will feed you when we get home. And he's like, oh, that's too much work. And like people keep offering him these amazing offers of food to do very minimal labor, just, help me out for 5 minutes and I will gladly feed you. And he keeps saying no. And then by the end, he learns the value of work, being a good person, helping others. But like you said, it all happens very quickly in like 2 chapters. He does go to school consistently for like 2 weeks, maybe. Um, so I guess he fits the criteria, but I agree, not so much for me in the book. I like what you said. He crammed for the test. In the movie, slightly different criteria. The Blue Fairy says that to become a real boy, Pinocchio has to prove himself to be brave, truthful, and unselfish, and to learn the difference between right and wrong. This is where we get the always let your conscience be your guide. So in the film, do you think Pinocchio achieves the right to be a real boy?
Yeah, I would think so because I think he's more earnest in his want and desire. It's a crux from the beginning. Like when he goes to school, he's excited to go to school in the movie. He gets completely derailed by Honest John and Gideon, but I think there's a more genuineness to him in the film. And so it feels like we're consistently working to that through the whole plot of the film versus the book.
And I think the Monstro piece plays a bigger role in getting him to be a real boy. It's important still in the book that he rescues his father from the shark, but I think that and being unselfish and brave, his acts to go find Geppetto, get him out of the whale. We have as they like to call in Disorder, a Disney fake death. That his feet is a lot stronger. He's willing to not exist at all to save his father, and then in return gets to become a real boy. So I think it does hit a little harder in the book, like you said, the earnestness.
Yeah, I'm
But I guess
absolutely gonna give it to the movie on this one. I know sometimes people say, "Oh, yeah, the book's always better than the movie," but we have found an instance where the movie is better than the book.
yeah, I agree. And again, I don't know what I missed because reading some of the reviews of literature professors, maybe this is the life when you get to study something so much, you do maybe having that academic setting where we could discuss this on end. Maybe I'd find a new appreciation for it, like I did Ernest Hemingway in high school. But yeah, this one didn't do it for me, and I don't know what I missed. But I definitely agree. Book, not as good as the movie.
Yeah.
Disney did a solid.
And did a solid by incorporating it into the parks. Quite a few references around the globe. You and I are both Walt Disney World girlies. We have, of course, the Pinocchio Village House quick service, which serves, I guess, Italian quick service food. It's pizza, it's Parmesan subs. Is this one that your family frequented?
Not really. We were always Columbia Harbor House people.
Okay,
Um,
interesting.
but it's one I think I went to a lot more in my college program. It wasn't that we didn't go there, but I don't remember eating a lot of pizza really in Disney. My parents are definitely foodies. A big part of us going to the parks was always about we planned our food first, and the rest of our day was around the food. We did a lot more sit down, I think, than quick service when I was a kid, and we still do because my parents, that's something they really enjoy.
Yeah.
But I do have a lot of memories like knowing what that looks like. One of my favorite spots to sit in the park and chill is the outdoor upstairs balcony. I do
I
like
didn't
that.
know there's an upstairs to a few
Yeah,
years
it's
ago.
not
You
a
might have
lot.
shown
There's
it to
like
me, and I
four
was like,
tables.
oh.
But it
We
overlooks the plaza.
it
I
does
like
not
sitting up there.
surprise me that we did not sit there though, because this actually was a frequent visit for us. Now, mind you, again, recognizing the privilege, we would go to Walt Disney World for like a week. So, we would go to Cosmic Rays, we'd go to Columbia Harbor House, and we were going to Magic Kingdom more than once. Uh, this is the one that overlooks It's a Small World. So there's a set of
Yes.
tables by the window that looks down at the ride. And so my stepsister and I were close in age. So we were probably like 8 and 9 years old. And we'd go. And so like our parents would be in line and
Mhm.
they'd be like, "Oh, you go get a table." And we would like run and stake out a table by the window and we would just sit there and wave to
It is
people
so fun
on
and
It's a Small
endearing.
World until our parents came back with the food.
And
So
it's so clever. So this is kind of like Disneyland has Blue Bayou overlooks Pirates of the Caribbean, and the settings are similar, but having Pinocchio, who is a marionette, overlooking It's a Small World, which is a
oh, I
lot of
never
dolls,
thought
it
about that.
makes a really
Yeah, that
strong
works.
connection between the two.
I just liked waving at people. I'm the
And I
type of
like the
person, if I'm
murals.
jogging, like I wave at people.
Yeah, I don't love the food in there, and it does get very crowded because it is a popular location for families, but I do think it's a beautiful location.
There's a
The
fun
mural work is gorgeous
wish
inside.
book. Have you ever wrote your wishes
Yeah,
down in the wish book? I think
I
someone
put
pointed
that
that out to
on.
me. Little
I
bucket
learned
list.
about that before going on my college program. I was
Yeah.
doing one of those like college program like bucket list things, like what are all the,
Oh yeah.
deep cut things you can do in a park, and that one came up. I went deep in the Pinterest boards looking for like all the crazy
That's
fun
a
things you can
fun. I
do.
mean, who knows? Maybe with TikTok now, people are like, "Look at this secret thing in the Magic Kingdom," but
It's
I
not so
didn't know
secret
about it
anymore.
till
Yeah, that was a new thing for me too, and I
later.
think that's really cute. Tell us your wishes. Um, but yeah, so I like that location. I do like sitting up on the balcony, and then you get to overlook like the courtyard
We
area.
should do that together next time
It's
we visit.
nice. It's a
I don't
nice
think I've
spot.
ever. I've walked up there, but I've never sat up there. So I've
There's
never.
not a lot of tables. There's only like four tables,
No,
and it's
I
pretty
believe you.
thin. Like they're only it like seats two, one across from each other. But it is a nice location. Not my favorite food. There's other quick services I would prefer, but I do like stopping in there. Great place to get water. Great place
Always
to
a
ask for
plus
water.
in Florida.
Pinocchio and Geppetto are always in parades. Like I
Yes, very
can't think of a
frequent.
single parade. They have a Monstro float in Festival of Fantasy where he does not look so menacing. It's very whimsical and enchanting.
But you're right,
But
even in like the Christmas and the
with his little
Booty-You
scarf.
parade, like Christmas is a scarf. Booty-You, I think they're part of the set of characters that have like little masquerade masks
I
that
think I
they
remember them in Spectro
put up.
Magic. I think I remember them like as like just the group of characters
Pervasive.
that are like
Well,
in the
I would
middle of
hope
like a
they
Mod
were
Podge.
in Spectral Magic voiced or narrated by the one and only
Yeah.
Jiminy Cricket. Oh my gosh, I had a CD that we would listen to all the time that was Parks music and the Jiminy Cricket intro for Spectral Magic. He'd be like, "Da Magic Kingdom proudly
Proudly
presents."
presents
And he was like,
Spectro Magic.
"Da Magic Kingdom." And so we would that was a phrase in my household. Let's go to Da Magic Kingdom.
Yeah, so speaking
And
of
wishes. Oh,
Jiminy
pour one
Cricket, yeah, like
out.
the host, rest in peace to Main Street Electrical Parade, wishes.
Wishes.
I love the little
Sigh.
animatronic Jiminy Cricket that was at the was it Electrical Parade where he was at the end? He was like on the back of the last float. I don't remember if
Oh
that was Spectrum
yeah.
Magic or I
I'm
think that
not
was Electrical
sure.
Parade.
Well, that's a
I
great
get them
question.
confused sometimes in my head because it's light
Yeah,
up costumes.
and they overlapped like within our formative years. Yeah, no, I looked
But I
that up.
remember him, he was on the last float and he was at the end and then wishes would start. So like you saw the hosts
Yes,
and
yes,
then
yes.
the synergy was great.
Oh, I get chills just thinking about wishes. And
Yes.
he wants us to think about our dreams and our wishes, and I cry.
We also see Jiminy
Best
Cricket and
one.
Monstro and Fantasmic. They're in
Yes, the
the
clip,
screen, the water
the good
screen.
segment.
So that's in there. Rest in peace to Pleasure Island.
Yeah, a weird. I was gonna bring that one up too. Like, it's its own thing. If you've listened to the 3028 and Meriwether Adams Pleasure or Map,
Yeah.
not tied to Pinocchio. I think really
But the
just
name.
I was
Just
gonna
a
say in
name.
name only, but it was, I think, a smart choice on that era is to be like, all
Yeah,
right,
it was
let's
meant
go
not for
for edgy
families.
things.
It's
Yes.
adult entertainment. Not even in that sense, but like it
I
was
think it's
bars,
absolutely
music,
inspired by
nightlife.
Pinocchio, but developed into its own story and placemaking.
Yeah. I remember the marquee for it. I don't remember much else, but I remember being in what was downtown Disney and like seeing like at this point you've now crossed into Pleasure Island. Like there
Yeah.
was a big marquee
Yes, yes, yes.
and
Cross the bridge.
lights. So this is a fun one. Gideon and Honest John, or his official name, Jay Worthington Fowfellow.
All right,
They
pop off,
actually
Emily.
meet quite a bit in Epcot if you
Yeah.
catch characters on the right day, and they are ones that unless you know Pinocchio, you are not going to know who they are. So heading over to Disneyland, you might remember more than I do. I can only remember 3 instances in my time in Disneyland. There might be more around Fantasyland, but I've only been once. You've been more than I have. Pinocchio has a dark ride,
Yes, which
which
I
is
was
incredible.
surprised to learn later on. I just assumed that was an opening day attraction, like Snow White's Scary Adventure, and now it's Snow White's Enchanted Wish, but Peter Pan, Alice, Mr. Toad. No, Pinocchio Dark Ride didn't show up till 83. It technically, I just
What?
confirmed this. I mean, I knew that, but I was like, I'm gonna go check to Wikipedia and confirm the dates. It opened in Tokyo Disneyland first on April 15th, 1983. So
Huh.
opening day for Tokyo. And then opened May 23rd, 1983 at Disneyland. So yeah, you would just assume, well, the movie was made in the 40s, surely in 1955.
Yeah,
They
like
didn't
it's
have
its
a
second
lot
film.
to pull from. Nope. 80s Dark Ride
Interesting.
from a Fantasyland
Oh.
expansion. But it feels just as iconic and fits right in with the
It has
others.
a
So,
similar vibe to Mr. Toe. Like it's
oh
it's a
yeah,
dark ride in the sense that it's dark in theme, not just
yeah.
low lighting. I remember being like, this would be terrifying to me as a child riding
Pinocchio's
this.
Scary Adventures. No, it's Pinocchio's Daring Journey. But
Daring Journey, but
those, but yeah, the Snow White's Scary Adventures, Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, like they're pretty intimidating.
I mean, but they're pretty true to the fairy tale in that way that they were intimidating stories. I believe he does have a doll and it's a
Yes, he
small world
does.
representation. And then Monstro is a big feature of the Storybook Canal Boats. You go through Monstro.
Iconic film shot from Disneyland Fun where they're on the
Yes.
little boat and they sail into Monster's mouth, and I was truly so excited.
I
the
was
first time
so
went to
happy
Disneyland. I was like,
when
I'm
I did. I was
going
like,
to
yes, here we go, here we go.
It's time.
I think I took a video of it.
Oh,
Like
understandable.
the same way you take a video going under the gateway going into Walt Disney World, and everyone's
Yeah,
like,
you're
we're
like, I'm
here. I
going
took
in
that as like,
Monstro's tummy.
I'm being swallowed by a whale, and I was so happy about it.
No, I think that is
yeah.
it. I think they had a Pinocchio Village house. It might have had a different name, but now it is the Red Rose Tavern themed to Beauty and the Beast. And honestly, I'm okay with that. So
I'm trying to remember if I saw Figaro, like a statue of him or something somewhere in Fantasyland, like on a windowsill or something. Like there's just a black cat that looks like Figaro.
probably by the ride.
But those were the only 3 that I could remember off the top of my head, other than character meet and greets or character appearances like in parades and such.
Yeah, I was
as
gonna say, I
well.
feel like there was a big like Blue Fairy bit maybe in Paint the Night, if I'm remembering.
Oh yeah, that's
correctly.
right. She was in Paint the Night. Yeah, so constantly characters that show up in parks. So overall, thinking this through, like it shouldn't surprise me that it has such representation being Walt Disney's second film. But I think it surprised me how much more, maybe because it's just not a film that I reach for, but like how much Pinocchio does
It's
have
pervasive.
in
I mean, we haven't even touched on When You Wish Upon a Star, which is
Right.
basically the anthem for the company. The Disney Cruise Line horn is like
it got a fireworks show. It's in everything. It gets woven into everything. We talked about this when we read the jazz book. It's a standard. Like
Yeah.
so many people have covered that. It won best original song. I don't think anyone saw that coming when they made the film, that like this is gonna be the thing that stands out the most from the film was gonna be that song.
It's the opening notes of like the Disney banner when you're seeing a Disney film, like the little 90s
Yeah.
VHS and the star cut. Yeah.
Yeah.
And oh, here we go. We're gonna watch a
It's
Disney
so
movie.
good.
So yeah, shout out to When You Wish Upon a Star.
And Wishes. That became the whole basis of it.
Yeah,
I listen to Wishes probably once a week.
I love that for you.
Just yeah, when I'm like, oh, I only have 10 minutes left of this drive, I'm like, Wishes.
When I just need to feel something.
Yeah, exactly. Some other references, Minnie's pets. Minnie has a goldfish Cleo and Figaro her cat. It was
I want
very
to
much
know
from
in the
that.
cartoon universe how that happened because it's Figaro. It looks like Figaro. I'm like, did
Yeah.
she adopt him from Pinocchio? Like, I need to go into
Figaro
Roger
was just
Rabbit World,
over.
go to Toontown, and be like, what happened here?
Was like, I'm tired of getting eaten by whales and chasing after this puppet. I want the real life.
Geppetto does not treat Figaro well in the movie. Figaro is so snuggly in his little bed. Like, there's that gif where like he just snuggles into the blankets, and then
Mhm.
Geppetto's like, "Oh, Figaro, I need you to close the window," and Figaro's
And
pissed.
Geppetto's right there. He
He's
could
right
just
there. He could
move his
reach.
hand and close it, whereas Figaro has to leap and bound.
He's an inventor. He could make a mechanism to close it. But no, Figaro has to get so uncomfy out of the little bed. So yeah, I don't blame Figaro.
In Disorder, they're like Figaro, they say like Figaro's such a brat. And I was like, no, I think
He
Figaro
is
is
not.
misunderstood.
Yeah, Figaro
He
is
is misunderstood.
mistreated
We stand
and
Figaro
does
here.
not want to put up with it anymore. And I guess that's why Figaro goes to live with Minnie. I will accept
I think
that.
Figaro feels shoot, the word I'm looking for, just like unappreciated.
Yeah.
Geppetto, I want a real boy. I want that, which there's nothing wrong with that.
He
But, like,
kicks Pinocchio. Geppetto controlling
Figaro's
Pinocchio
like,
kicks
I am your,
Figaro.
I have done, have I not fulfilled
Justice
that
for
you?
Figaro.
I don't think Figaro would be against having, another brother or something, but the way sometimes Geppetto acts like he's unfulfilled in life, and Figaro's like,
I'm right here.
I'm trying to help.
Doing
I'm
my
trying
best.
to be your companion and friend. I do love Cleo. She loves Figaro, and
she's
Figaro
so cute.
Figaro's like, why does a fish like me? I like how opposite it is. Like, Figaro wants nothing to do with Cleo, but you would think stereotypically, like Sylvester or Tweety, that the cat would go
Yeah.
after the fish, and he
Yeah.
wants nothing to do with her. I think Figaro is the ultimate black cat energy that we channel when we think about
That's real.
you're in a black cat.
Just some other quick references. Name tags for cast members often feature, you've probably seen 1-year pins on a name tag with Steamboat Willie. Pinocchio and I believe Jiminy Cricket are on the 35th cast member pin.
That's what I found online.
Walt Disney World a few years ago celebrated its 50th anniversary, and they installed 50 character statues throughout the 4 theme parks, and Pinocchio was chosen as one of them. You can find him over in Fantasyland at the Magic Kingdom, though the 50th celebration is over. Those remain there as a fun interactive thing for guests who have a Magic Band Plus.
Yeah, so overall, if you enjoy Pinocchio, you've got plenty of places that you can find in the parks and outside of the film to enjoy that story. And overall, I love all the things that they did with Pinocchio in the parks that I've seen, even though, again, it's not a
I'd
film
agree. Not our
that we
favorite
go
film.
for.
Certainly not our favorite book, but decent representation that I'm happy to see.
Still a good character, great music.
Emily, what is your resource, though, to leave with our listeners?
I'll go to tip my hat. Disorder. Surprise. I feel like every time we do an original tale, comparing, but Disorder is such a great resource to go to because they talk a lot more about the animation and the gags and the writing and the drawing. So if you're much more into the animation history, Michael Lyons is a plethora of knowledge, friend of our podcast, and he's on there and talks a lot about the animation that goes into this. So if you want more of a deep dive into the film analysis and its creation, I highly suggest Disorder.
Excellent
What about
choice.
you?
Should be no surprise, though it's been a while since I mentioned them. Our bonus features, while I own the DVD, I checked, and there are a few under the extras tab on Disney Plus. I'm always excited to see when there is an extras tab for a film. So that included multiple deleted scenes for this film, as well as a nice little segment in Walt's words, which I think is, fun when we get to hear from Walt himself regarding those stories that he had such a hand in. So lots more if you're a Pinocchio fan, or like us, maybe not quite a fan, but want to dig deeper as we did. And we will continue to dig deeper on our next episode. We are returning to our fairy tale favorites format after a long absence in our feed. And our next selection, we are going to highlight one of our personal favorites, Beauty and the Beast. Similar to Pinocchio, this is a story that has been translated several times and is in the public domain, so we will again include a link to the version that we will be reading in the show notes. Also, just as a heads up, we will be appearing on podcast pal Brett's Notably Disney for Dream Chasing, My 4 Decades of Success and Failure in Walt Disney Imagineering, by Bob Weiss. So be sure to subscribe and follow Notably Disney to find our episode appearance in your feed when it releases, likely next month. In the meantime, you can keep up with Book of the Mouse Club on Instagram at Book of the Mouse, or email us with comments or ideas to bookofthemouseclub@gmail.com. Please leave us a review wherever you're listening so that others can find our podcast and read and listen along with us. If you want to keep up with me, Courtney, I am on Instagram at Great Gutsby.
And you can follow me, Emily, on Instagram at Emily_McD. And Courtney, we've had 2 episodes now back to back, just the 2 of us. I got to do the quote last episode, so it is your turn.
I mean, I think I had it kind of easy this time around because really, was there any other quote that I could choose for this episode? I, of course, chose, quote, "When you wish upon a star, makes no difference who you are. Anything your heart desires will come to you." End quote.
Yes, we said it's our favorite part of the movie.
There you go.
So listeners, thank you so much, and we look forward to having you back when we talk about Beauty and the Beast.
Book of the Mouse Club has no affiliation with the Walt Disney Company. The views and opinions expressed by hosts and participants are theirs and theirs alone. They do not represent the organizations or companies they happen to work for.